So, good morning, everyone. My name is Arafat, and I teach history on the textbook platform. So, in this session, let us continue our series on the Italian unification movement. In fact, in our previous class, that is in the last week class, we had a session on the Italian unification movement. So today's class is a continuation of the same lecture. That is, this is basically the second lecture on the Italian unification movement. So those students who have not watched the first lecture, you kindly watch the first lecture as well so that you will have a better understanding of this topic. So the point is, Italy of the present times was during the medieval times was divided and was ruled by many foreign dynasties. Take a look at this map of Italy before we discuss any more details relating to the present topic. So basically the present topic, the topic of today's discussion is the Italian unification movement. The Italian unification movement. Another point. So the Italian unification movement happened between 1815 to 1870 is what we usually refer to as the Italian unification movement. Let me repeat. To those students who have not attended our previous lecture, you kindly go and watch our previous lecture so that you will have a proper understanding of what we are discussing in today's class. So this is basically an Italian unification lecture. So this is basically the second class. So the Italian unification is basically the time period between 1815 to 1870 is what we refer to as Italian unification. In simple terms, those students who have missed our first class, basically this is the map of Italy. But this Italy during the medieval times was not under the control of one single ruler. It was not under the control of one single ruler. That's my point. Basically, this entire territory was divided into 5 different parts and was under the control of 5 different rulers. And more importantly, take a look at the 5 different parts of Italy. So this region, what we call as the Piedmont and the Sardinia, was under the control of a dynasty known as the Savoy dynasty. So I told you this is basically the present map of Italy. But during the medieval times, and in fact till 1870, this Italy was under the control of 5 different dynasties. This Italy was under the control of 5 different dynasties. So Piedmont and Sardinia, I have just marked it here. This is basically the Piedmont and this is Sardinia. It was under the control of a dynasty known as the Savoy dynasty. And similarly, you can see here Lombardy. This is basically Lombardy. Number 3 I have marked. Number 4 is Venetia. This Venetia and Lombardy was under the control of the Habsburg dynasty of Austria. Habsburg dynasty of Austria. So basically, the neighboring territory of Italy is Austria. You can see here this Austrian Empire. So the Austrian rulers also had their control over Lombardy and Venetia. Basically, these are Italian-speaking territories, Lombardy and Venetia, but were under the control of the Habsburg of Austria. And similarly, we had 3 territories called the 3 duchies: the Parma, Modena, and Tuscany. PMT. You can see here. This is Parma, this is Modena, and Tuscany. We call this as the Central Duchies. The CD stands for the Central Duchies. Sorry. So these Central Duchies were under the control of the rulers supported by the Habsburg. The central duchies were under the control of the rulers supported by the Habsburg of Austria. Then fourth, we have what we call as the Papal State. The Papal State, this red marked region is basically the Papal State, which is basically the territory under the control of Pope. Pope was ruling this territory. I'm just sorry, this is some problem with the stylus. So kindly bear with me for this class. Next class I will change the stylus. Fine. So the fifth is this yellow marked region is what we call as the Sicilies. Basically, the north region is Naples and the southern territory is Sicily. Just a minute. This is Sicily. Naples and Sicily. This is basically Sicily. So basically, let me just show you. This is basically Naples and this is basically Sicily, the southern part. So these Naples and Sicilies were under the control of Bourbons of Spain. So there was a dynasty ruling Spain called the Bourbon dynasty. Just a minute. The Bourbon dynasty was ruling Spain, but the southern part of Italy was under the control of these Bourbons. Now take a look at this map of Italy. What you see is basically the map of Italy in 1815. These entire Italian speaking territories were basically under the control of 5 different rulers. But what is even more problematic was that except for Piedmont and Sardinia, basically this Piedmont and Sardinia was one kingdom, except this Piedmont kingdom was ruled by a dynasty known as the Savoy dynasty. The rulers of Savoy were the only native Italian rulers. Basically, the rulers of the Savoy dynasty, which was ruling Piedmont and Sardinia, were the only native Italian rulers. It means that the other 4, be it the Habsburg, the central duchies, the Papal State, the Bourbons, all of these were the foreign rulers who were ruling different regions of Italy. When I say regions of Italy, I am basically referring to the Italian speaking territories. So this was the situation that existed in Italy till almost 1870. Till almost 1870. I hope I am clear. So the whole point which I am trying to convey is Italy till 1870 was a divided house. Italian speaking territories were under the control of different rulers. And what was even more problematic was that except for Piedmont and Sardinia, the other parts of Italy were under the control of foreign rulers. They were under the control of foreign rulers. I hope I am clear. So Italian unification movement in simple terms was a movement that aimed at bringing the whole of Italy, by which I mean the entire Italian speaking territories, under the control of one ruler, and that too under the control of a native Italian ruler. In simple terms, let me explain this once again. Italian unification movement was a movement that aimed to bring the whole of Italy, by which I mean the entire Italian speaking territories, under the control of one ruler, and that too the native Italian ruler. So that's about some basic information relating to the Italian unification movement. That's my point. I told you this Italian unification movement can be discussed in 2 phases. So in our previous class, we had in fact discussed this phase 1. So those students who have not attended our class, you kindly watch the previous class so that you will understand the first phase of Italian unification. So basically, Italian unification movement is between 1820 to 1870. And this Italian unification movement can be broadly discussed in 2 phases. Phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is between 1820 to 1850 and phase 2 is between 1850 to 1870. So in the first phase, various attempts were made to achieve Italian unification, but all of these attempts ended up becoming failed attempts. So in phase 1, various attempts were made to achieve Italian unity, that is to unify whole of Italy. But all of these efforts during the first phase ended up becoming failed attempts. They ended up becoming failed attempts. That's the point. So the Italian unification in fact became a reality during the second phase. So kindly watch our previous lecture on phase 1 of Italian unification. So let me directly jump into the second phase of Italian unity. So in the entire Italian unification movement, 4 individuals played a very important role. Let me repeat, the credit for uniting Italy is given to 4 individuals. The first, undoubtedly the most important individual who played an attempt in this regard is Mazzini. Second, we have Garibaldi. Third is we have Count Cavour. The fourth is we have the ruler of Sardinia Piedmont by name Victor Emmanuel II. Got the point. Let me repeat this point once again. 4 individuals played a very important role in the Italian unification movement. One is Mazzini, second is Garibaldi, third is Cavour, the Count Cavour, and fourth is Victor Emmanuel. So let us discuss a few details relating to all these 4 individuals before we discuss the second phase of Italian unification movement. Let me repeat. Let us discuss a few details relating to all of these individuals before we discuss the second phase of Italian unification movement. That's the point. So Mazzini, in simple, Mazzini was he is regarded as he's regarded as he's the ideologic he was the ideologue. He was the inspirational leader in the Italian unification movement. He is basically regarded as the so he was the one who the point is Mazzini is very famously referred to as the prophet of Italian unification. Let me repeat, Mazzini is very famously referred to as the prophet of Italian unification. So he was greatly pained to see Italy being ruled by foreigners. Got the point. So with a view to achieve Italian unity, he began joining in various secret societies that aimed to achieve Italian unification. Let me repeat this point once again. So Mazzini is famously referred to as the prophet of Italian unification. He was greatly disturbed to see Italy being ruled by so many foreigners. So he tried his best to achieve Italian unity. So basically in the 1820s, he joined in a secret society called the Carbonari. Let me repeat, understand, remember this name, Carbonari. Carbonari was a secret society. It was a secret organization which was actively involved in the Italian unification movement. So this secret society had numerous members in it. So the Carbonaries, the members of Carbonari began to be referred to as the Carbonaries. So these Carbonaries were very actively involved in carrying attacks on the foreign rulers who were ruling different parts of Italy. So basically Carbonari was a secret society which aimed to achieve Italian unity. So Mazzini in fact became a member of Carbonari way back in 1820. So he actively participated in many movements which were aimed at achieving Italian unity. Then in 1831, the same individual, that is Mazzini, founded another organization called as Young Italy. He founded another organization called Young Italy. So Young Italy, so through this organization, he advocated Italian unification. So Young Italy had numerous it had the youth as its members. So it was through this organization that Mazzini carried an Italian unification movement. So initially Mazzini was involved in Carbonari, But later he himself started another organization called Young Italy, through which he tried to carry the Italian unification movement. That's the point. So the point is, what were the ideas promoted by Mazzini? Mazzini promoted nationalism, he promoted democracy, and the idea of unified Italian republic. So basically, Mazzini was not just he did not just desire Italian unity, he also wanted to make Italy a republic. So these were his two objectives. One, he wanted to unite Italy, and second, he also was in favor of Italy becoming a republic. So these were basically the ideals of Mazzini. So he dedicated his life to achieve that particular cause. That's the point. So going forward, I will be discussing more about the role of Mazzini. For the time being, remember this much. Then second, we have is Garibaldi. Garibaldi was a follower of Mazzini. Garibaldi is another individual who also played a very important role during the Italian unification movement. So Garibaldi was a follower of Mazzini. Garibaldi was also a military leader. That's the point. So along with Mazzini, Garibaldi made numerous attempts to overthrow the foreign rule from Italy. Let me repeat. Along with Mazzini, Garibaldi too played a major role in ending the foreign rule from Italy many times. That's the point. So going forward, let me elaborate the role played by Garibaldi that I will be discussing in the coming slides. Then we have Cavour, Count Cavour. Count Cavour was the mastermind. He was the mastermind behind the Italian unification. So Count Cavour was basically a journalist by profession. Count Cavour was a journalist by profession, and he edited a journal by name Risorgimento, meaning rebirth. Let me repeat. Count Cavour is often referred to as the mastermind behind the Italian unification. Count Cavour, his actual profession is journalism. He was a journalist by profession, and he edited a journal called Risorgimento. I have not written here, but you write it down. Risorgimento, meaning rebirth. So in that journal, he wrote numerous articles advocating Italian unity. That's the point. So the ruler, the king of Sardinia at the time was one Mr. Victor Emmanuel. Victor Emmanuel. The ruler of Sardinia was Victor Emmanuel. I told you Victor Emmanuel, he was the ruler. And I told you the ruler of Sardinia Piedmont happened to be the only native Italian ruler. The other parts of Italy were being under the control of foreigners, whereas Sardinia was under the control of Victor Emmanuel, who was the only native Italian ruling over an Italian territory. So basically, Victor Emmanuel was greatly impressed with the writings of Count Cavour. Basically, Count Cavour was a journalist. Count Cavour wrote numerous articles in his journal Risorgimento, meaning rebirth. So, impressed with these articles of Count Cavour, Victor Emmanuel appointed Count Cavour as the Prime Minister of Sardinia Piedmont in 1852. So, Victor Emmanuel, the ruler of Sardinia, appointed Count Cavour as the Prime Minister of Sardinia Piedmont in 1852. So, it is this individual, it is Cavour, who played a very major role in the entire Italian unification movement. Basically, he was the Prime Minister. He was serving as the Prime Minister of Sardinia Piedmont or Piedmont Sardinia. So, he is said to have, he played a very important role. What role he played, I will be explaining in the coming slides. Fine. Finally, we have the King Victor Emmanuel II. So basically, he was the ruler of Sardinia Piedmont, the only native ruler to rule over Italian territory at a point in 1850s. So it was during his time period as the ruler of Italy that Italian unification became a reality. That is what happened. Fine. So let us now spend some time discussing about the second phase of Italian unification. I told you Italian unification was carried out in two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. But in this entire Italian unification movement, four individuals played a very major role. One is we have Mazzini, who is referred to as the prophet of Italian unity. Second, we have is Garibaldi. Third is we have Count Cavour, the Prime Minister of Sardinia Piedmont. And the fourth is we have Victor Emmanuel II, the ruler of Sardinia Piedmont. These four individuals played this very important role. Got my point? So take a look at the role played by Count Cavour in the second phase. I told you it was in the second phase that the Italian unification became a reality. So take a look at the role played by Count Cavour. Count Cavour was basically a realist in politics. Count Cavour was basically a realist in politics. He knew very well that he very correctly estimated that the greatest roadblock to Italian unity was Austria, because Austria at the time was being ruled by the Habsburg. So the Habsburgs were a very powerful dynasty, and the Habsburgs had their control over Lombardy and Venetia. I just showed you the map. You kindly, after the end of the class, you take a look at that map of Italy. So in Lombardy and Venetia, the Habsburg had their control, and moreover, the Habsburg also had their control over the central duchies, namely Parma, Modena, and Tuscany. These are basically the central duchies located in Italy. Even over these central duchies, the Habsburg of Austria had their complete control. So basically, Count Cavour very correctly estimated that the greatest roadblock to Italian unity was Austria, because Austria would never agree to an united Italy. That's my point. So therefore, Cavour came to the conclusion that Cavour came to the conclusion that Italian unity can become a reality only with the expulsion of Austria from Italy. That's my point. So basically, Cavour came to the conclusion that Italian unification could become a reality only with the expulsion of Austria from Italy. That's my point. But Cavour also came to the conclusion that Sardinia alone cannot overthrow or throw Austria out of Italy. Let me repeat this point once again. Cavour came to a few conclusions. He very correctly estimated that the greatest roadblock to Italian unity was Austria. He came to the conclusion that the Italian unity would become or could become a reality only with the expulsion of Austria from that of Italy. But at the same time, he also declared, that is, Cavour also declared that Sardinia, that is Sardinia, which was under the control of the native Italian ruler, alone cannot throw Austria out of Italy, because Sardinia was not a very powerful kingdom. On the other hand, Austria was a very mighty empire. It was a very powerful kingdom. So therefore, he came to the conclusion that Sardinia alone cannot throw Austria from out of Italy. So therefore, it became the policy of Count Cavour to secure the support of other powerful countries of Europe in this regard. So therefore, it became the policy of Count Cavour to secure the support of other powerful countries of Europe, particularly France and England. So this was the conclusion he came when he became the Prime Minister of Sardinia in 1852. So for this reason, Cavour made every possible effort to secure the support of the great powers, particularly particularly France and England. I hope you all have understood the point which I tried conveying. So the whole point is, when compared to Sardinia, Austria was a very powerful empire. So Sardinia was under the control of the native Italian, whereas the other parts of Italy were under the control of foreigners. So the ruler of Sardinia wanted wanted to secure Italian unification. He wanted to achieve Italian unity. So, but Count Cavour, who was appointed as the Prime Minister of Sardinia, very correctly realized that Sardinia alone cannot throw Austria out of Italy, because Sardinia was less powerful, very weak when compared to Austria. So therefore, it became the policy of Count Cavour to secure the support of other powerful nations. That's the point. So therefore, it became the policy of Count Cavour to secure the support of other powerful countries of Europe, particularly France and England. Got your point. So that's the reason why I told you Count Cavour was the mastermind behind Italian unification. He was a realist in politics. He was one of the finest diplomats of his time. It was as a result of his diplomatic skills that Italian unity became a reality in course of time. You understand this point? The very important role played by Count Cavour. He was absolutely one of the finest diplomats of his time. He played a very fine role in securing the support of other powerful countries of Europe in achieving Italian unity or unification. What is that role? I will be discussing shortly. So that's some basic understanding of Count Cavour. So Count Cavour was a diplomat, was undoubtedly one of the finest diplomats. So take a look at some policies initiated by Count Cavour. So as the Prime Minister, that is in the capacity of a Prime Minister, Count Cavour initiated a few policies which can be discussed in two categories. So the policies of Count Cavour can be discussed in two categories. One is the internal policies, second is the external policies. Internal and external policies. So the internal policies which he initiated aimed at strengthening Sardinia. The internal policies which he initiated aimed at strengthening Sardinia, because he believed that the Sardinia has to be powerful enough to carry out Italian unification. So all his attempts, all the initiatives which he took were aimed at strengthening Sardinia, because he believed that only a powerful Sardinia alone can realize the task of Italian unification. Got the point? So what internal policies did he undertake? Take a look at it. He basically encouraged trade and commerce. Got the point? He encouraged agriculture, because unless and until the economy gets without a strong economy, Sardinia cannot become a powerful kingdom. So therefore, he took care to promote trade and commerce. He also encouraged agriculture, and thereby he took proper care in strengthening the economic foundations of he took proper care in strengthening the economic foundations of Sardinia Piedmont. So basically, all his internal reforms were aimed at strengthening Sardinia. Got my point? Take a look at external reforms. So I just told you that Count Cavour was a very great diplomat. He was a gifted diplomat. So he used his diplomatic skills to the advantage of Italy. He used his diplomatic skills to achieve Italian unification. So it is because of his diplomatic skills that ultimately Italian unification became a reality in course of time. Got the point? So take a look at the diplomatic skills that Count Cavour had put to use in different instances. Let me repeat this point. Count Cavour was a gifted diplomat. He was one of the finest diplomats of his time. It is because of his diplomatic skills that ultimately Italy became one nation in course of time. Got my point? So let us take a look at the let us take a look at the diplomatic skills which Cavour had put to use at different points of time. One, during Crimean War. Let us not go into the details of the war, but let us discuss some basic details. So in 1855, a war broke out in Europe known as the Crimean War. So this Crimean War was fought between Russia on one side and France and England on the other side. So France and England were a part of a confederation which fought against Russia. And we call this as the Crimean War, fought in the year 1855. That's the point. So the point is Sardinia, that is Count Cavour was the Prime Minister of Sardinia. So Sardinia had absolutely no rivalry with Russia. That's the point. Yet Count Cavour declared his full support to the coalition. Coalition comprising of France and England. So the point is Sardinia had absolutely no rivalry with Russia. Yet Count Cavour declared his full support to the coalition. In fact, the Sardinian troops participated in the Crimean War on the side of the coalition. He sent troops. The Sardinian troops were sent to participate in the Crimean War, and these Sardinian troops participated in this war on the side of the coalition. Got my point? So some scholars say that this was undoubtedly a master stroke of foreign policy. Scholars say that this was undoubtedly a master stroke of foreign policy for Sardinia, because in this war the Sardinian troops fought very, very bravely and returned victoriously to their country, to their kingdom. So basically the Sardinian troops fought very bravely and returned home victoriously. They returned home very, very victoriously. So after the Crimean War, a conference was conducted known as the Paris Conference in 1856. Take a look at this conference. So after the Crimean War, a conference was conducted known as the Paris Conference in 1856. Got my point? So this conference was attended by all important powers of Europe. The point is, in this conference, all important powers of Europe participated. So in this conference, even Sardinia was invited, because Sardinia participated in the Crimean War. So therefore, the important powers of Europe even invited Sardinia to participate in this peace conference, that is, in this Paris Conference. Let me repeat. After the end of the Crimean War, a conference was conducted known as the Paris Conference in 1856. All powers of Europe participated in it. All important powers of Europe participated in it. But the point is, Sardinia was also invited to participate in this conference. What was the outcome? The point is, in this conference, basically, Count Cavour gave a very damaging account. He gave a damaging account of Austria. He basically narrated all the wrongs committed by Austria in Italy. Basically, in this conference of 1856, Count Cavour gave a list of, or presented a list of all the wrongs committed by Austria in Italy. At a point. So basically, a few of the territories of Italy were under the control of Austria, and therefore this man, he presented before the European countries the wrongs which Austria had committed in Italy. This is the point. So by doing so, he very successfully secured the support of the European powers. He secured the sympathy of the European powers, particularly England and France, towards the cause of Italy. Let me repeat this point once again. By doing so, he very successfully secured the support of the European powers, particularly England and France. Support to what? He secured the support of these European powers to the Italian cause. At a point, he successfully secured the support of these two countries, particularly England and France, to uh, towards the Italian cause. Get the point? So the whole point which I'm trying to convey is this man, Count Cavour, was one of the finest diplomats of his time. He tried his best to use diplomacy to achieve Italian unity or unification. One such instance during which he put his diplomatic skills to great use was the Crimean War, because Sardinia had no role to play in the Crimean War, because Sardinia had absolutely no rivalry with Russia. Still, Sardinia joined or entered the Crimean War on the side of the Confederation, comprising of France and England. So in this war, the Confederation emerged victorious, and after which a peace conference was conducted. In that conference, this man, that is Count Cavour, presented a damaging account of the wrongs, the mistakes committed by Austria in Italy, and by doing so, he successfully secured the support of the major powers of Europe towards the Italian question or towards the Italian cause. That's the point. So this is the first instance in which Count Cavour displayed his diplomatic skills. The second instance during which he put his diplomatic skills to use was an event called the Orsini episode. So Orsini was a revolutionary. Let me repeat. The second instance during which Count Cavour put his diplomatic skills to great use, or the second instance during which the diplomatic skills of Count Cavour were on display, was an event called the Orsini episode. Orsini was basically an Italian revolutionary. He was also a bandit. So Orsini was an Italian revolutionary. He also desired Italian unity, but Orsini was also a bandit. So in 1858, Orsini made an unsuccessful attempt to assassinate Napoleon III. So those who do not know who Napoleon III is, Napoleon III was basically the French ruler, was the ruler of France. He became the president of France way back in 1858. Let me repeat this point once again for you. Napoleon III was the ruler of France. He became the ruler of France. He became the president of France in 1858. Happy point. So basically, this Orsini was an Italian revolutionary and a bandit, and this Orsini made an unsuccessful attempt to assassinate the French ruler Napoleon III. Because, so what was the motivation? Basically, Orsini believed that the France, that is the French ruler Napoleon, was also considered, basically Orsini considered Napoleon III to be a roadblock to the Italian unity. Basically, Orsini, he basically believed the French to be a roadblock to the Italian unity, and therefore Orsini made an attempt to kill Napoleon III. But I told you that this was a failed attempt. At the point, this was an unsuccessful attempt. So immediately Orsini was arrested and was sentenced to death by the French. Orsini was arrested and sentenced to death by the French. Got the point. The point is, if this incident been handled by any other person other than Count Cavour, got the point, it would have undoubtedly resulted in a breakdown of relations between Sardinia and France. Because an Italian man tried to kill the French ruler, and therefore this incident potentially it possibly would have resulted in a breakdown of relations between Sardinia and France. But the point is, even this incident was used by Count Cavour to the advantage of Italy, to the advantage of Sardinia. The point is, an assassination attempt was made by Orsini, who is basically an Italian man. So therefore, this incident would have possibly resulted in a breakdown of relations between the two. But the point is, even in such a situation, Count Cavour tried his best to use even this situation to the favor of Italy, or in favor of Italy or Sardinia. That's the point. So basically, I just told you, Cavour used even this incident to his advantage. Basically, Count Cavour negotiated with, he tried to convince the French ruler Napoleon by arguing that incidents of this type were a result of oppressive rule of Austria in Italian territories. Basically, Count Cavour tried to convince the French ruler Napoleon III by arguing that incidents of this type, that is the Orsini episode, were basically a result of oppressive rule of Austria in Italian territories. Basically, he tried to convince the Napoleon III by saying that these type of incidents are happening because people are getting frustrated with the Austrian rule in the Italian territories. That's my point. So, before Orsini was hanged, Orsini famously uttered a sentence, "Deliver Italy." The point is, Orsini was arrested, he was sentenced to death. So before he was executed, Orsini made an appeal, made a death appeal. The death appeal is deliver Italy, that is free Italy. So this death appeal is said to have greatly moved the French ruler Napoleon III. This death appeal is said to have greatly moved the French ruler Napoleon. So it was after this incident that France, that is Napoleon III, agreed to extend military help to Sardinia. So the point which I am trying to convey is, Sardinia episode would have ultimately led to a breakdown of relations between Sardinia and France, but somehow this was prevented because of the diplomacy of Count Cavour, and importantly, the death appeal made by Orsini, the death appeal being "Deliver Italy," is said to have greatly moved the French ruler Napoleon, and it was after this incident that Napoleon agreed to extend military help to Sardinia. In fact, in 1858, so this Orsini episode happened in 1858. In the same year, France and Sardinia entered into a treaty known as the Treaty of Plombiers. They entered into a treaty known as the Treaty of Plombiers, 1858. So you don't have to write this whole story, but the whole point which I'm trying to convey is, I'm trying to explain to you the diplomatic skills of Count Cavour. That's the point. So take a look at the provisions entered into the provisions of the Treaty of Plombiers, 1858. Provision 1. In the event of a war between Sardinia and Austria, France shall help Sardinia. In the event of a war between Sardinia and Austria, France shall help Sardinia. That is the first provision. Second provision says, in return for help, France shall give, in return for the help, Sardinia shall give Savoy and Nice to France. In return for the help, Sardinia shall give Savoy and Nice. So these two happen to be the territories under the control of the ruler of Sardinia, but these two had a substantial French-speaking people. Savoy and Nice had a substantial French-speaking people, but these territories were basically under the control of Sardinia, the ruler of Sardinia. So basically, the Treaty of Plombiers contained two provisions. One is, that in the event of a war between Sardinia and Austria, France should side with Sardinia. And second provision says that in return for the help, Sardinia shall give, I'm extremely sorry, in return for the help, Sardinia shall give Savoy and Nice to France. Sardinia shall give Savoy and Nice to France. So basically, I just told you Savoy and Nice had the considerable French-speaking population. So therefore, uh, Count Cavour promised to surrender these two territories to France. Third provision, to further strengthen the relations, both of these parties agreed to enter into matrimonial relations. That is, to further strengthen the relations between France and Sardinia, both of these parties tried to they promised to enter into matrimonial relations. Got my point? So this was between whom were these matrimonial relations, who were the actual parties, that need not be discussed. But the point is, both sides decided to enter into matrimonial relations. This was what was agreed to. Got my point? So immediately after the Treaty of Plombiers, 1858, Count Cavour began to provoke Austria. The point is, immediately after securing the support of France, Cavour began to provoke Austria. He began to write numerous articles criticizing Austria, and therefore, provoked by Cavour, Austria declared a war on Sardinia. Basically, after securing the support of France, Count Cavour, the Prime Minister of Sardinia Piedmont, began to provoke Austria. He began writing articles against Austria, criticizing Austria, and provoked by Count Cavour, Austria declared a war on Sardinia. So this is exactly what Count Cavour wanted. The point is, Count Cavour wanted a war with Austria. Count Cavour believed that a war must definitely be fought. Count Cavour believed that only by defeating Austria that the rule of Habsburgs from the Italian-speaking territories can come to an end. You understand this point? The point is, Count Cavour was in favor of a war with Austria because he believed that only with a war, the point is, he believed that a war with Austria is a must. He believed that only by defeating Austria, the expulsion of Austria from the Italian-speaking territories would become a reality. So he desired a war. That's the point which I'm trying to convey. So when Austria declared war on Sardinia, Count Cavour exclaimed with great joy, with great happiness. Count Cavour exclaimed, "The die is cast and we have made history." So what does that mean? It means that Count Cavour was in fact looking for a war with Austria. That's the point. So as agreed to in this treaty, that is in the Treaty of Plombiers, France participated in this war on the side of Sardinia. So basically, provoked by Count Cavour, Austria declared a war on Sardinia. And as soon as the war began, and as per the Treaty of Plombiers, France participated in this war on the side of Sardinia. It participated in this war. Within a short span of time, Lombardy was occupied. I told you, Lombardy and Venetia, these territories are basically Italian territories, but were under the control of Habsburg of Austria. So within no time, Lombardy was occupied, and the Sardinian troops even marched towards Venetia. They were even about to occupy Venetia. So when that was about to take, immediately Napoleon withdrew his French army and arranged a treaty between Sardinia and Austria. When that was about to take, when the Sardinian troops were about to occupy even Venetia, immediately this man, that is the French ruler Napoleon, withdrew the French army and arranged a compromise. He arranged a treaty between Austria and Sardinia. We call this treaty as the Treaty of Villafranca 1859. The Treaty of Villafranca 1859. So basically, take a look at the provisions of this Treaty of Villafranca. Austria shall cede Lombardy to Sardinia, but Austria shall retain Venetia. That's the point. So basically, the Sardinian troops were about to occupy even Venetia. In that critical movement, Napoleon all of a sudden withdrew his army, and even he conducted, he organized, he called for a meeting, and in that meeting, a compromise between Austria and Sardinia was reached. That's the point. We call this compromise between both these parties as the Treaty of Villafranca 1859. So these are basically the two provisions of the treaty. Austria shall cede Lombardy to Sardinia, but Austria shall retain Venetia. So basically, so it was in 1859 that finally Lombardy became a part of Sardinia. So this acquisition of Lombardy in 1859 was in fact the first step towards Italian unification. So Italian unification was achieved in 4 stages. This acquisition of Lombardy in 1859 is the first step towards Italian unification. Now you must have got one doubt. The point is, the Treaty of Plombiers was basically an agreement between France and Sardinia, in which Napoleon agreed to help Sardinia in their fight against Austria. So in fact, as promised, Napoleon even sent his troops to fight against Austria. But when the Sardinian troops were about to occupy Venetia, immediately Napoleon withdrew his army and he called for a compromise between Austria and Sardinia. Why? Why is this a sudden change of heart? Why did Napoleon withdraw his support? What are the reasons? Basically, Napoleon never thought that the war would come to an end so soon. Now I am trying to explain to you why is this sudden change of heart in Napoleon. Basically, Napoleon extended his support to Sardinia, but Napoleon was firmly of the view that even in the case of a war between Sardinia and Austria, the war would not come to an end so soon. The war would proceed for a long time, and therefore Napoleon thought that that will give him an opportunity to extract even more territories from Sardinia. That is, in Treaty of Plombiers, Sardinia promised to give Savoy and Nice, 2 French-speaking territories, to France. But Napoleon was of the view that this war between Sardinia and Austria would proceed for a long time. He was of the view that the extension of the war would allow him to extract few more territories from Sardinia. But the point is, the war between Sardinia and Austria ended very shortly. Within no time, the Sardinian troops occupied Lombardy, and they were also about to occupy Venetia as well. Napoleon was not taken aback to see war coming to an end so soon. So Napoleon was of the view that the war would proceed for a long time, but quite contrary to what he thought, the war between Sardinia and Austria ended very soon. Cut to point. Napoleon was basically taken aback at the rapid pace at which the point is the Sardinian troops succeeded in occupying Lombardy within no time, and they were also about to occupy Venetia as well. And therefore, Napoleon did not want the war to end in such a short span of time. and therefore he immediately withdrew the French support to the Sardinia. He immediately withdrew the French support to Sardinia, and he immediately called for a compromise between Sardinia and Austria, and that compromise resulted in a treaty known as the Treaty of Villafranca 1859, and these are basically the provisions of Treaty of Villafranca 1859. I hope I'm clear. So that's about the second, this is about the first step towards Italian unification. So basically the Italian unification proceeded in about 4 steps. The Italian unification got completed in 4 steps. What we discussed today is basically the first step towards Italian unification. So Monday we will once again meet and complete the rest of Italian unification. Fine. So I am discussing this topic at great length so that you all understand. So you go through our first lecture on the Italian unification movement. Monday we will once again meet and complete this particular lecture. Got the point? So we need another half an hour class to complete this lecture. We will meet on Monday and complete this lecture. Fine. So that's all for today. See you in the next class.